Hello there, Drew Hannish for Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. And today I am doing that tasting I was going to do yesterday, but I'm doing it now, which is the Talisker Port Ruighe. Now, this is actually named after the biggest town on the Isle of Skye, which is looks like Portree, the way that it's spelled normally, but this is the um, Gaelic version of the spelling. Now, very interesting whiskey because when I was in Scotland, I was like, I'm going to bring back some bottles, but I need to really be choosy about what I bring back because I only wanted to bring 3 back. And so I did not buy this at the distillery, otherwise it would have a different label on it. This is the old label, and this label, it actually says that it is the only distillery on the Isle of Skye, which is not because Ruighe is there now, and so the new bottles say that it's the oldest distillery. Now I will say, if you're going to call yourself the oldest distillery, when I'm on your distillery tour, you should tell me some history, because they say nothing about history on their tour. I was absolutely floored by that. Their tour mostly focuses on production, and then at the end it focuses on the tasting, and it gets pretty in-depth with tasting, goes through the rules of Scotch and all that sort of stuff. But the thing I love about distillery tours is when they get into the history, especially if you have a history like Talisker does, and you should be telling some of that history. Now, he did mention one thing historical about them, which was that they had a fire in 1960, and that fire, a pot still blew up, and then the whole place burned down. And so they had to get a new mill. So they actually, I say new mill, but they found a Porteous mill. I don't think I've gone into a discussion about the Porteous mill on here. And one of these days, I'll give a little bit of the history on the Porteous mill. It's a fascinating story, though. It's a company that's out of business, but yet almost every distillery in Scotland has that or a bobby mill. So, and those are old mills that are just very, very reliable. And so they can, as the tour guide said, every drop of Talisker made since 1962, that grain has gone through that Porteous mill, old dependable. So, by the way, I bring that up because I am starting to do profiles of these distilleries like I do in my travel books. Oh, my travel books are far away. Yeah, there we go. So this Ireland, this book was written in 2020. So I am trying to get on the website because it gives you an address that you can go to and you have a code, and then you can go see the updated profiles as I get them done. I'm just starting to work on those now. But I am actually doing some scratch versions of my profile for my Western Scotland Island Distillery book. And so I will, if you're on patreon.com/whiskeylore, you will get a chance to see that posted later tonight. It's only going to be up for a day. Then what I'll do is I'll put it to the club level, and they'll be able to see it up until it actually ends up on the website along with the release of the new book. So if you're curious about Talisker, today and tomorrow will be the time to go check that out. All right, let's jump in and do a tasting of Port Ruighe. This is actually finished in port casks, and so I was kind of getting into this. The reason I got the older label on this is because while I was at Talisker, I had already bought 2 bottles on my trip, and I'm like, I really like this, but I might find something better, because I still had another 8 or 9 distilleries to go to, and one of those was Springbank, and I was really looking at getting the 12-year-old cask strength, which I didn't have. I should have known. And then when I got to the end of the trip, I'm like, I need to go stop by the spirit shop in Glasgow and pick up a bottle of Port Ruighe, because that was good enough that I wanted to bring it back. So, going to do a tasting on this port finish. What I love, I am a big fan of Talisker. I like Talisker 10. This is younger, okay? So it should have a little bit more punch to it in terms of the Talisker flavor profile coming from the new make spirit. But then the added bit of that port wine is going to give kind of a sweeter note to it. And so I was just fascinated to see how are these things going to come together. So this is 45.8% ABV. I am sad to say that it is only available overseas. It is not available in the US. I hope that changes at some point, but you're going to get some of the Talisker notes in this. It has a very complex nose to me. There are grain notes in here. There's that nice lighter peaty note in here. I always say Talisker is a really nice gateway into drinking peaty whiskeys because you get a little sea character, a little brininess on there. You get that mixed. There's a nice little sweet note on this too that adds in like a berry note. But there's a nuttiness to this as well. But like I say, the smoke is not overly aggressive. It will, if you're thinking somewhat savory, well, keep that in mind because that's what you're going to experience with the brininess and with that smoke. But it's not going to be overly aggressive for you. Made by the sea, they say, and you can smell a little bit of the sea in there. You also get a pepper note in there, which is interesting. But the sweetness on the nose is not something you necessarily get that much of in a Talisker 10. This is all coming from that port cask. Cheers. There's like it's almost like Kool-Aid berry, but then it goes into the pepperiness. Then you get this really interesting mocha note that comes in, kind of a dark chocolate. Then the wood takes over and you start getting a little bit of a wood tannin kind of a note in there along with that pepperiness. Then the brininess comes in, and then you still have a sense of that berry note, but the berry kind of pulls back and lets more of the traditional flavors come out. This is actually probably closer to Storm than it is to Talisker 10 because this is a little more aggressive, and Talisker Storm is made up of 8 and 12-year-olds versus a 10-year-old and you go, well, what would be the difference? Well, because there's younger whiskeys in there, I think that gives that a little bit more aggressive note on the peat side of things. And so you're getting a little bit more activity with some of that, with those dark chocolate notes and with that peaty note coming in as well. And it's just really interesting because now I still have the smoke on my palate and the pepper on my palate, but the berry is completely gone at this point. But it kind of, if you're a fan of Talisker, it makes you want to go back and have another drink because you're remembering some of those Talisker notes, and then you get hit with that kind of berry note when you nose and taste the whiskey. I really like it. I'm glad I bought it. It's one of those that no regrets, and then it's the problem of when I want more of it, I have to go overseas to get it, unless the people at Diageo go, hey, okay, we're going to go ahead and make this and have enough of it to bring over to the US. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this. And like I say, if you want to learn more about Talisker, you can go out and see my profile today, tomorrow, and then it's gone into the club level. Actually, it'll stay in the speakeasy level of Patreon for a little while, but join us on Patreon. It is patreon.com/whiskey-lore. That's where everything whiskey lore happens. Like if you enjoyed the video, and more coming up next week. Until next time, have a great weekend. Cheers, and slainte.